Hello everybody and welcome back to this tutorial. And right now what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at files in Python 3. Now what we did in the previous sections is we saw some of the basics of Python, but we never really interacted with files in Python 3. Now before we even start creating our own files and opening them for reading and writing, let us take a look at a certain library that comes in Python 3 that is going to help us with the navigation through files, directories, and also the creation of files themselves. Also, this library has some of the functions that will help us to check out whether a certain file exists, what's the path of that file, to give us our current working directory, to also change our working directory, and many more. Now, many of you maybe actually know this library. It is the OS library. We used it before. We never really did a detailed look at it, but right now it is the time to do that. So, first of all, before we even do that, it is important to first understand what a file is. Now, file, as we can see right here, if I just open up my notepad and type something right here, for example, hello there, and I go onto the file right here, save as, and save on my desktop right here. Save it as, for example, file.txt. Press here enter, close this. Right here we will have a .txt file on my desktop. Now there are two parts of this file. First one is its path, and the second one is its name. If we wanted to, for example, check the path of this file where it is currently stored, which is on our desktop, we can go right click on properties, and then right here under the location you can see the full location of this actual file. So it is in the users, this user, and then /desktop, as we can see right here. That is the location or the path of the file. The name of the file itself is file.txt. That is what we gave it when we actually saved the file. So basically, to sum up, name is what you see for a file, and its path is, for example, drive C desktop file 1. Okay? So, right now that we know that, even though most of you actually already knew that, we can open up our idle right here, and we will import our OS library in order to check out our current path in the idle itself. So, open up this, let us enlarge it, type here import OS. We imported it successfully. As you remember, the import command will import the library that is in the Python 3, and therefore right now we can use all of the functions that the OS library has in its code. The first function we will use is a function that will give us the current path, or as it says, working directory, and the function is called getCurrentWorkingDirectory, or shortly just type here os.get CWD, open and close brackets, as this is a function, and you can see right here what the current directory for our Python 3 is. So it is users, this user, app data, local programs, Python, and then Python 37. In order to check that, if it is in the same directory as it is in my PC, first of all, the app data folder is a hidden folder, so you can actually access it via command prompt. So just open up your search bar down here, type there cmd, click on the first thing, which will most likely be the command prompt, and then once you navigate to the actual user, as you can see right here, or wherever this path opens, just type here cd app data, or you can just type here ap and then tab it, and you will and the command prompt will automatically go to the app data. There you can type dir, and it will have 3 directories. As we can see, the directory of our Python 3 is in the local directory. So this is the first one. You can change with the command cd, so cd local. There, if you type dir, you will have multiple packages or Python programs, or basically Python libraries, and a bunch of other programs as well. As you can see right here, SolidWorks, Sony, Steam, temp directory, programs. And there we should find, under the programs, we should find Python 3. So cd programs, and then there once again, you can see there is Python. We change it to the Python, type there once again, and basically just to remind you, dir command basically lists all the files and directories in the current directory. Therefore, we use it to list all the files that are in this path right here. And there, in the actual cd python 37, we have our python.exe and all the scripts that come with it. So basically, that is what a path is. This is the place where our Python 3 is stored. And this function that we saw right here will actually get us the current working directory of our Python 3. So this is also another way to check out where your Python 3 is stored. Once you open up your idle, it will automatically open up python.exe from the Python folder. And when you import the OS and get current working directory, it will be right here. Now, the reason why I am showing you all of this is because we don't really want to create files and navigate through the system in this directory right here. This directory is specifically made for the Python 3 scripts, programs, and necessary requirements and libraries that it needs in order to run, such as this Python 3 DLL, Python 37 DLL, remove.py, and many more. We don't want to create our normal txt files like this one. Let me just find it. In that directory, we simply just want to create it right here, for example, at our desktop. So in order to actually go from our idle to the actual desktop, we need to change our directory. Then in order to do that, we will do it with the help of the OS library. That's why I showed you all of this. So the actual function that will allow us to do that will be the change directory function, or shortly chdir. So if you just notice right here, the OS get current working directory printed out this path. But let's say we, for example, don't want to go here. We want to go to the desktop. So we just type here os.chdir, open and close brackets. And you will notice if you just leave it like that, it will say missing required argument, which is the path. Of course, in order to change the directory, you need to specify to which directory you want to change. And in our case, we will change to the desktop directory. So os.chdir, and in between the actual brackets you can specify to open single quotes, and in between those single quotes just paste the actual path. And right here I will just paste the first part of this path, place it right here, add 2 backslashes. Let me just switch up my keyboard so I can find the backslash easier, or never mind, it actually already has it right here. And we can just type here desktop, press here enter, and you will see there is not any error that popped out during this. If we perform the same function right here, you will see that right now, so os.get current working directory, you will see that right now our path has changed, which is a good thing. So right now we are in our desktop environment, and everything we create will actually be created right here instead of this path right here, which is a Python 3 directory. Okay, so we no longer need this for now. We can close it. The next thing I want to show you is that you can actually create a file and directory in Python 3. Now, basically a file and the directory are two separate things. Creating files we'll take a look at later on, but from now on, to create a directory, you can simply use the OS library, again, with a certain function, which is called makeDirs. So you need to specify once again the same argument, which is specified in the chdir, which is the path. So just type here os.makeDirs. Or let me just check right here. Maybe it is makedir. We'll just take a look at both of these functions. You can paste this path right here, which is our current path. Or you can simply just type here the actual folder name, which let's say we call it folder 1. Press here enter. Okay, so it doesn't have the actual function makedir, so it's probably makeDirs. Let me just check it out once again. So os.makeDirs, folder 1. It worked. We can see folder 1 was created without any error. Now let's see if it is on our desktop. And we saw that we actually successfully created a folder on our desktop environment. Now, if you didn't change the actual path before, this folder 1 would be created in the Python 3 directory, which we don't really want. You wouldn't be able to find it, first of all, especially if you didn't know about the app data directory and it being a hidden directory. You would actually struggle to find this file that you created, or pardon me, this folder. Now, let us delete this folder. We don't really need it right now. What I want to show you is the next thing is that you can actually create the folders in different directories outside of your current directory. So currently we are in this directory, but you don't really need to create a folder there. You can create from this directory to a whole different directory. So right now, let us just create simply another folder one. We'll call it folder in our directory. Okay, it is on our desktop right here. And now, without changing our directory, let's try to create another folder in this directory right here. So just go right here, os.make dirs. And there are two different things you can specify right here. Either the full path using this part as well, which we will use. Now this is a good practice to add the actual full path instead of just adding a folder in our desktop directory, then 2 backslashes, and then some directory name that you want to specify. So let me just show you right here. We need to add 2 backslashes, even though we can add it just like this. We want to go to the folder in our directory, and there in that folder, from the desktop environment, we want to create folder outside of our directory. Now, not really, these are not really original names, but doesn't even matter. It matters that we can actually create folder in different directories as well. If we go right now in the folder in our directory right here, you can see that in that folder, even though this is outside of our environment, we were able to create folder outside of our directory. So this os.makeDirs function actually works both ways, whether you are creating a folder in your current environment or not. Okay? So there are also some other functions to take a note of that will help you navigate through your system, or should I say something similar to the command prompt once you change directory, once you actually list all the files, and so on and so on. First of all, let us take a look at a function that will retrieve the path or the absolute path of the argument. Now the argument is, we already know, something that you specify between the brackets in a function. So let's say something like this, os.path. And to check for the absolute path, you can just use, as you can see right here, our idle prompts it right away. So use apps path. And in between the brackets, you need to specify the actual path to a certain directory. So we can use this one right here. So we don't type it twice. Just paste it between, and you can see that it actually prints it out back to us. It will, as it says, the function will retrieve the path of absolute path of the argument. Okay? If you simply just try to use something like this, os.path.appspath, and instead of specifying the entire path, you specify only the folder name, which is folder in our directory, it will retrieve the same thing, which is the full path to this directory, which can be useful if you are on a different PC and you don't really know the user name. As you can see right here, this can be different for everyone. This name right here. Whoops, update failed. Okay, doesn't even matter. We are not connected to the internet, so that's why it doesn't work. But let's get back to our Python 3 programming. Now, what I said is that this can be different for every person using Windows 10. This is basically your user account on Windows 10 machine, and in order to check out the full path of a certain folder, you can simply use this function right here to do that. Okay? And in order to check, for example, a really similar function to this, but in order to check, for example, if a certain path is the absolute path or the full length path, you can use isAbs function that is also part of the OS library. It will retrieve a Boolean value of true or false, depending of the argument you specify in between the brackets, which in our case will be simply the full path or the only directory name. So let us use it right here, os.path.isAbs, and in between the brackets, first of all, let's specify something that we know that is an absolute path. So copy this in between the brackets, add the double or single quotes, paste this right here. Oops, not there. We need to paste it in between brackets. Right here. Let me just... Okay, I managed to actually paste it at the right spot, press here enter, and you can see that retrieves an actual value of true, which means that this is an actual full path or full length path or absolute path, however you want to call it, and therefore we now know that this is the full path to this directory. In order to get a false value, you simply need to specify some directory name in your environment, which in our case can be folder in our directory. Press here enter, and you can see we retrieve a value of false. Therefore, we now know that this is not an absolute path to this folder. Okay, so those are two useful functions that you might need sometime. The next thing we need to cover is to check the file name and the base or directory path for that file, basically using the base name or dir name functions. So let's go back to our file that we created at the beginning of the video, which is our file.txt. Let me just check something out right here. Okay, never mind. Which is our file.txt. So let's get back to our file.txt. This is a file that basically inside it we have hello there written out, which is not really that important to us at the moment. But this file, we're going to use this file as an example to use the function's base name or dir name to retrieve the actual file name and the actual path with those different functions. So let us go to our idle. And let's say we create a variable called file_path. Whoops. We need to actually define this. So file_path equals, and in between, let's say double quotes, we will specify the full path to the hello.txt, which is under C. Then we need to use 2 backslashes, users, 2 backslashes, the name of the current account on the desktop, 2 backslashes, then the desktop environment, which is where our file is, and at the end we specify the actual file name, which is file.txt, which sometimes the actual Python idle will even prompt it for you, as we can see right here, file.txt. Okay, this is our actual variable containing the path, and right now let's use these two different functions. So os.path.basename, and in between the brackets we specify our path, which is stored in our file_path variable. And as I said, this function will retrieve the name of the file itself. If you use it right here, you will get only file.txt. So what this function basically does is it takes the full length path or the absolute path, and it will strip out the last string or the part of this variable right here after the double slashes, because this will mean that this is the actual name of the file itself. In order to retrieve the first part right here, you can use os.path.dirname, which stands for basically directory name. And in between the brackets, you specify file_path. And you can see it will retrieve the path to this file. So those are also some of the functions, not really that useful to us, as we can actually code our own functions that do something similar to this. But if you need it, you know that you have it in the OS library. Okay? Now, instead of these two functions, you can also use os.path.split to split them by directory path and file name. So you can see right here, if you just type here os.path and then .split, and in between the brackets you specify the path to the file, which we will use the same one right here, so file path. You press it right there, and you can see it will create a tuple that will be consisted of 2 elements, which will be splitted out in the directory path and in the actual file name itself. Now, in order to basically store it into different variables, I believe we can do something like this. So directory, comma, file name will be equal to os.path.split. And there we specify file_path, and then if you just type here print something like this, so the path to the file, and then we add file name plus is at this path, and then we plus directory. And you can see right here, the path to the file, file.txt, is at this path, C users this name, and then the desktop environment. So this is also something useful, and if you want to just simply split it and store it into different variables, you can do that by using this line right here. Okay, and also something that you might need is maybe you want to get the file size or certain specific file, for example .txt, .mp3, doesn't even matter, any file size. You can do that as well with the Python 3 OS library. So the function that we will check out right now is the Getsize function. It will retrieve the size of the file in bytes. So right here, if you just simply type, whoops, let me just go down here. If you just simply type os.path.getSize, and in between the brackets you simply specify once again the file path, you will get that the actual size of the file is 11 bytes, which is actually normal, because if we open this file right here, we can see it has two strings. One string will be 5 bytes, the empty space is 1 byte, and the next string is also 5 bytes, and that combined equals to 11 bytes. So our actual Python 3 idle gives us the exact same number, so it means that it is correct. This is also another function you can use. You can do something like this as well. So, for example, for file, let me just think about this. Let me just find where we did that function. Where is it? Where is it? Their name, it's not that one. So for file, okay, we'll take a look at this function once we actually start opening files. For now on, maybe it will get a little bit confusing, so we will leave it for later. And for the end of this video, let us also take a look at different functions in the OS library that you might need. So also some of them are to check whether a certain file exists, or if it is a directory or a file. Now, those actual functions are called exist and is there or is file. So first of all, let's take a look at the exist function. Basically what that function does is as it says, it will check whether a certain file or directory exists. So right here, we know that we are in our desktop environment, which we can check with simply using a function that we already did before, which is get current working directory. And right now, in order to check what files we have in this current working directory, we can use also OS library and use a system function. And what system function allows us to do is to specify any system command in between the brackets. We know that once we used our command prompt right here, so let me just show you once again, we changed to the desktop directory using cd command, and once we change the desktop directory, in order to list all of the files, we just simply type dir, and you can see it will list all of the files. So by simply specifying dir in between the brackets, oops, let me just check it out right here. Yeah, it will execute it in an actual command prompt, but though it will not print it right here, which we will use another actual library to do that. So import subprocess. We imported subprocess in order to use subprocess underscore check output. Let me just remember whether that actual function exists. So subprocess check. Yeah, I'm not really sure if it is called check output. Let me just check it out real quick on my laptop. Basically, what this function check output allows us to do is to check the output of the system command, which in our command prompt, the output of dir command is simply just the file names themselves. So subprocess dot underscore check output. Yeah, it was dot and then check output. So okay, so subprocess and then dot check underscore output. Yeah, okay, so this function actually exists. So subprocess dot check underscore output, and then in between the brackets simply specify the command, which will be in our case dir, and then comma shell equals true, which basically means it will execute it in a shell. And therefore, even though it is not really that pretty output, we get all of the files that are in our current working directory. As you can see right here, let us try to find the file.txt. here is our folder in our directory, and here is our file.txt, as well as the size of that file, which equals to 11 bytes. Okay? So that is also something you can do. The OS function that I showed you before, which is the system function, basically does the same thing, just it will not really output it to our screen, therefore it is currently useless for us. But what I wanted to show you is the exist function, so os.path.exists, and in between the brackets simply specify the file that you want to check whether it exists. Now you may want to perform this function once you create a file in Python and you want to just make sure that you successfully created it. You can do that by simply specifying the exist function and checking out whether that file exists. So let's just copy the name of this, paste it right here. Oops, once again I put it at the wrong spot, so I will just copy all of this so I don't type it once again. I will delete this actual single quote and paste it at the beginning. And you can see it will return a true boolean value for this folder because we know that it actually exists. If you simply just specify os.path.exists and in between the brackets specify file that doesn't exist, you will get a false value, of course. Okay, so that is also something useful. And the last two functions that we are going to take a look at in this video are going to be the isDir and isFile function. So first of all, we created in this video two different types. One of them was a file, which we can see right here, even though we created it manually using Notepad. And in the next video, we will see how we can actually create it in Python 3. But for now on, we only saw how we can create directories in Python 3 using the OS library. Right now, we can use the two functions isDir and isFile in order to perform the check which one of these is an actual file and which one of these is an actual directory. So let us open up our idle once again right here and use an actual function, so os.path and then .isDir, and in between the brackets we will specify, let me just find it, this path right here. Whoops. So the path to our desktop environment or to the environment where you actually created these files. I always mistake these actual single quotes at the wrong place, but doesn't even matter. So isDir, and then we will just type here file.txt. And you can see we get the value of false because file.txt is a file and not a directory. If you simply use this actual same function and specify the folder name, you will see that it will actually return a value of true. So what is the name of our directory? Let me just find it. So folder in our directory. You can see it is a value of true. Same with the isFile function. So os.path.isFile. And let's specify the same path right here, which will retrieve a false value. You can see right here, false value, and os.path.isFile of this path right here. I'll just copy it like this. Oops, I also mistyped it once again. So os.path.isFile. Let's delete the folder name and type the actual name of the file, and we will retrieve a true boolean value. So basically these are all of the functions that we're going to take a look at this long video. We actually took a look at quite a lot of functions that are going to be useful to you once you actually navigate through the system, navigate through different directories, check for certain directories, check for certain files, and once you basically interact with the system itself. Okay? So basically that will be about it for this video. What we're going to do in the next video is we're going to take a look at the creation of files, writing to files, reading to files, and of course closing and opening files themselves. Whether those are the files that we actually want to create right now or the files that already exist on the system, we're going to take a look at both ways in the next video. So hope you enjoyed this tutorial and I hope I see you in the next one. Bye!